Hey guys, Angie with AngieGensler.com here, and I want to welcome you to Freedom Friday, where I interview successful entrepreneurs who quit their 9 to 5 job to create a business and life they love. And today I am joined by Jim Traister, and Jim is the founder and CEO of HospitalityFan, a full-service marketing agency. Now, Jim's team have produced some pretty incredible results for his customers, and in fact, they've even increased sales up to 20% for their clients. Now, prior to owning his own business, Jim spent 16 years in the restaurant industry, and he also taught information technology at the University of North Texas. So please join me in welcoming Jim to the show. Hey, Jim. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on here, and really looking forward to sharing our story. And I would say more specifically my story. I think it applies to a lot of your listeners, and I hope I can impact them as much as possible. So looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Okay. So before we get into, the beginning days and of starting this journey of your business, I want to hear a little bit more about HospitalityFan, what you guys do, how long you've been doing it, and who you help.
Fair enough. So I always share with everybody that we're going on 8 years legally. And if you have any questions why I say, actually, we've been in business 9 years, give me a call. But we'll probably discuss it down at the local bar. And I'll probably have you sign a commitment to NDA or something along those lines. So we're actually going on 9 years, 8 years legally, as I shared. So I've always been interested in starting my own business. And either I was really scared through the years for certain reasons, and it's really insecurities is what it comes down to be from my point of view. And then I came across this business called social media around 2007, 2008, really by accident. I was a teacher previously at a local community college. I ran their hotel and restaurant department for 5 or 6 years. That's before the University of North Texas. We had 2 rules in my classroom. One rule is never be late. And the second rule is don't use your cell phone in the classroom. Now, this is 2006, 2007. And so, in those 2 rules, I had a great student by the name of Sarah that I'll never forget. She was an A student in my class, and she was holding up her phone like this. I said, Sarah, what are you doing? Are you texting? And I really want to throw in some other language, which is not appropriate for this podcast. But with that said, she says, no, Mr. Traister, I'm not texting. So I'm like, okay, I got a wise guy in my hands now. And what I came to learn, she said that she's tweeting. So I'm like, tweeting? What's tweeting? I don't know, somewhere around 2008, 2009. So I tried to be the cool teacher, which is something I advise everybody not to do, especially if you're over 40 years old. And I decided to get on Facebook and try to bond with my students by getting on that. Of course, I had no idea what I was doing. But lo and behold, I did spend 6 months on there on Twitter and Facebook, and I eventually got off of it because it didn't make any sense to me at all. Why would people care about, who ate what that evening or what they did this week with their kids? I just couldn't make any sense out of it. So I got off of it. And then at that time I was studying to be a sommelier to get certified, which is somebody who's a wine expert, if you're not familiar with that term. Oh. And if you've heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a business, and most people have heard of him today, Wine Library, and he had a wine show. So I started actually following him on YouTube. And lo and behold, he was getting into social media around 2009, 2010 significantly. And he really made sense out of it. And to wrap up the story, a particular summer, I was making some money as a head waiter at a luxury hotel in downtown Dallas. I had made recommendations to a table that had come in for 3 nights by the name of the Thompsons. I'll never forget. They're from Seattle. And they said, Jim, we love dining with you folks here, but we can only eat here so many nights in a row. Do you have any recommendations? So I made 2 recommendations to 2 famous chefs that we have in town. Following night, the Thompsons are coming through the lobby of the hotel, and I was about to reach out to them and ask them where they dined. And lo and behold, I had an epiphany at that time. Just before I asked them where they were going, is I realized they went down there because I had credibility with them. And then number 2 is I had trust with them. And I had been in restaurant businesses I had shared with you, or food-related businesses, for 16 years. And the key way that I built business was building a one-on-one relationship with somebody like you, come in with your family, and then continue to drive credibility with you so that you feel a reason to come in. With that said, I realized that's what Gary Vaynerchuk is talking about when he's doing these videos on YouTube. Is like, this is all about building relationships online, but it's about doing it with seriously being on steroids. And I was like, okay. I reached out to a friend who owned a restaurant, and within 3 months, we had the Food Network come down to his business, and we won a proposal with the Mavericks, our local basketball team, to do promotions. And I said to myself, excuse my language, but holy shit, this is for real. I don't even know what I'm doing on this thing. I literally was doing meeting inside my office at the school between classes. And I'm like, I did this all on the phone? And man, it'd take me years to make something like that happen when I was running restaurants offline. So at that point in time, I knew I had something. This is around 2009, 2010. And I just went into it full-hearted. Now, for the next 4 or 5 years, I still was a full-time teacher, teaching 7 classes, had a couple of junks reporting to me. And what I'd like to share, I think a really important takeaway from my story that can apply to everybody, even though it's my experience and might not apply to others, I feel like one of the best things I did is kept my full-time job while I was building this business. Now, I had 24-hour days. Almost every day was long. I had no idea what I was doing, especially from a technical standpoint. That's not my background. But I had the cash flow, and I could make mistakes and afford to make mistakes. I think the other takeaway that I share with when I'm speaking at universities, the takeaway is find somebody to copy and paste. And what do I mean by that? Somebody's already doing it out there, great. There's no reason for me to go through a long learning curve. As much as I enjoy learning, I really do. And that's why I love the business I'm in. It's like it's never ending learning. Let's go out there and copy and paste. So at that time, 2009, 2010, the one person I could understand from the world of social media was Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, this is much earlier than when he was very mainstream today. And all he was doing is being a social media guru and applying. Why could I understand him? He came from the retail world, his dad's business, wine library, and I had come from the retail world. I wasn't as successful as him, but it's like I couldn't understand the language that he was talking about. So I drove 14 hours out to a show he was giving out in Nashville, Tennessee. I had a couple of questions, and they all had to do with getting started. He answered them all, and we just got started just like that. And then, lo and behold, and I'll never forget, I got teased in the classroom so bad by my students. He was speaking at South by Southwest in Austin, which is a huge show, really popular today. I asked him if I could be his gopher. And what do I mean by gopher? Watch his line or whatever. But I got to spend 8 hours with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Wow.
Like as close as this. And I watched his line. And so I tweeted to him, spent $1,000 to get into the show, and sat right next to him. And I got to meet his executive team, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
So all my students were laughing at me. It's like, here I am with a master's degree. Here I am a teacher making a salary and a secure job. Why would I do that? And that's exactly what I recommend to all my students is go work for free. Here I am. And even as I talk, I have all this energy going through me, is the access I got to Gary Vaynerchuk. And I got 8 hours of free advice sitting him next to me, talking to people.
Huge. I mean, I guarantee if you told any online entrepreneur now, like, what would you do for 8 hours with Gary Vaynerchuk? They would do anything. That's so incredible. You got that.
It was awesome. But it was, you know how I got it? So I'm driving down the expressway here, and then somehow a tweet came on, like a notification. So I pulled over, I sent him a tweet, and then it was as easy as that. Just asking,
Yeah.
And that's the first step of all this is just getting started, taking one easy step. And I met Tony Hsieh, who's the CEO of Zappos. A few folks have heard about him. I mean, from a distance, he's a huge idol of mine without question. It was an amazing experience. So going back to takeaways as far as getting started, I think number one is having cash on hand, having a secure job. I've seen more people fail in business, our competitors, meaning small business entrepreneurs who are like us, is when I go talk to them at shows, I'll ask them, hey, how's things going? If there's one point of negative energy around their business, it's always around the financials. And we've watched the cash flow from day one with a business. I can't say enough about that without question. Then number two is find somebody to copy and paste. I literally did whatever he said. I'd ask a question of him, and this is back when he was smaller and you could get access to him on his different podcasts. If he said it, I did it. I didn't question it. I think that's another opportunity for many people out there is they'll get advice and then they'll start questioning it. And I don't know if that has to do with self-sabotaging or something different. I'm not a psychologist, but I catch myself doing that sometimes when I get advice from mentors. And if they've been successful, just copy and paste and keep on going and then eventually make it your own. That's how I've worked. I'm not the smartest person in the world, so I try to find people who've already done it or are much smarter than me, like my people on my team. It's like, just run with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's some outstanding advice. And what a cool story.
I mean, thank you.
That is awesome. My mind is kind of blown that you got all of this time with Gary V. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I was so excited. He's a big, still, as most people probably listening understand what he's accomplished today. and he was big back then, without question. Now, with that said, I'd like to share with you, this is something else that we did, something I'm doing this morning. His second book, if you can remind me if it's top of mind, his first book was Crush It. Then he came out with another book, and I forget the name of it.
Jab, jab, jab.
Yeah, correct.
There's that one. Okay.
Yeah, so I actually got him a connection at the University of North Texas, where I had been a guest lecturer, for them to utilize his book in the classroom. And so with that said, I was helping him, right? It's like something that always worked for me, driving sales before. It's the same thing that we do on behalf of our clients, is building reciprocal relationships. What do I mean by that? Is I want to give, and Gary preaches about this all the time, but I want to give to him, 10 times more than he could ever give to me. So that also created an open door. It's exactly how my team manages social media. We're offering freebies or advice or whatever it be, for what it's worth.
Nice. That's fantastic. Now, how long? Okay. So, which I think it's just fabulous advice where you're saying, keep your day job, have that cash flow. That's what I was doing for a good 1.5 years before I finally quit my job, to go full time. But I'm curious, how long were you doing that before you were able to quit?
Yeah. So it's really, I would like to use the word choice, because I really believe, so let me think about the years. So roughly about, between 5 and 6 years is when I finally left the corporate world, meaning I was a full-time running a hotel and restaurant department at a college. Then I went to UNT and taught for a year. So I actually had left my job after about 5 years at the college I was running the department at. And then the university asked me if I could be adjunct to there. I love teaching. And I also looked at that opportunity. It wasn't so much for cash flow at the university. It was opportunity for open other doors, because when you're an educator and you're reaching out to businesses, it's like there's no threat there, right? They're going to go out there. So I saw that as opportunity. Literally halfway through the first semester, which would be about 5-6 years into our business, we were blowing up. And I think it's really was because there's a choice that I made of leaving my full-time job to move out of the junk. I had all this time, and I created that opportunity for me just to focus on the business. So when I say choice, had I left that other full-time job where I was running that hotel and restaurant program at the local college, I think I could have left, I know I could have left earlier, because I would have had that much more time. And essentially, I would have no choice but to focus on my business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. How did friends and family react, when they were like, oh, why are you leaving this stable, position? Right. What was the reaction when they found out that you were leaving to go do social media?
And I include my students as well, too.
Yeah.
So I like to talk with them. Strangely enough, most of them were more negative than me, because this is back in 2008, 2008, 2009, when I started the business. And they were getting bombarded by people on Facebook. As you remember, all brands pretty much could post whatever and it would flood into their Facebook pages. And they were getting hit. And they would say, Mr. Traister, all I do is get all these nasty stuff on LinkedIn and this and that. So I was like, man, all these young people are telling me not to do this. But they were really the most negative. Not that it wouldn't be successful at all, but they just couldn't understand, why would you do something with social media? Plus, I was much older than the majority of my students. I'm 25 or 30 years older, and they couldn't believe that I would understand this. What I did understand is I understood from a business perspective, not so much day in, day out on social media. Now, as far as my parents go, my family, my parents weren't very happy, especially my mom. My dad's somebody who served in the armed forces for 30 years, so kept the same job, very secure job, and my mom lived that life, of course, too. And and the other piece is having their son run a hotel and restaurant department at a college is kind of like having a dream and something to brag about, right?
Yep.
What is this world about? And then my brother's always been supportive. And then as far as friends, they were all supportive, without question. But really, the biggest battle was with my parents. But I had already decided to do it. It didn't question myself, because we had some early success with the Food Network coming down. It was Guy Ferrari, who came down to our client's place and just rose sales, and then the Mavericks. And I just knew from past history that, man, this is no different what we're doing with social media. Actually, I was doing it on my own at that time than what I had done in restaurant business and the big clients in the past, driving sales. So I knew it at that time. I think the scariest part, though, for my parents and other extended family as well as myself, is like making the final decision. Okay, we're going for it now, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you have, if there's someone who they're wanting to quit. They've built this business. They've got it to the point where they think, okay, it's probably time I can quit that job. I can take the leap. But they're terrified of all the negative, feedback, opinions from family and friends. What advice would you give to them on just overcoming that?
Yeah, so I this is my own self-advice that I'll share this, and I share this with my son. His name's Lewis all the time. You're the average of the 5 people that you hang around. Everybody's heard that, but I really believe in that. I even find those 5 people, I've got to continue to change those people out as I want to grow, right? Too. So it's really important is finding 5 people that have done much more than you've done. You're going to get a different set of feedback than your current, let's say, friend group who might be giving advice, or your parents. Remember, and I think actually this might be from Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm paraphrasing it, is many times they don't have your best interest in mind. They have their own best interest, right? You become a threat to them because maybe this is something that you dreamed of. And that's okay, because we've all been scared at some point. But this is my life without question. The other thing I question for myself, and I'm still scared some days, there's no question, I come across things, it's like, what is it that is making me fearful and not wanting to take that step? So I have to check in with myself, and it's a learning process, right? And I think, as I talk out loud and I think about business, and it's just been shocking to me. I was sharing with another mentor of mine, is that I'm not sure if the right language is this, but I think I'll be able to make my point, is how congruent the journey of being an entrepreneur and building my businesses is to my own life, right? The more I desire safety in certain ways, I didn't start this business. I want to be secure. I want to look good, want to have the right car. I didn't start my business for years. And if I'm really honest with myself, it's really that. I wanted to please other people more so than what Jim's journey was, if that makes sense. Out of everything I just rambled or ranted about, I think the most practical tip out of there, at least from my experience, is taking a look at who are those 5 people you're surrounded yourself with.
Yep. Yeah, that's great advice. When you were just beginning, I'm sure that it wasn't all cupcakes and rainbows. Was there like a big, and I don't really want to say failure, but essentially a failure or a lesson that just really rocked your world, but when you look back, you're like, wow, I needed that. It shaped the future of my business.
Yeah, so it's okay to see failures. We're still failing today. I have no problem saying that. It's never ending. And I'd like to share, I believe that's the number one thing I had to get used to, is the failing without question. And I love it now, because I always know on the other side of that, there's going to be something great. It happens every single time without question, as long as I'm there to receive it. So biggest failure, can I add an S to the failures?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's the first one I share with folks who are getting started and they're asking me advice. One of the biggest initial mistakes I made when we were so excited to get this business going and we're rocking and this and that and hiring my first person, the next person I hired was a salesperson. That was a huge mistake. I put her on salary and commission. Why was that a big mistake? And I learned this and folks can look this gentleman up. His name's Steve Blank, entrepreneur, genius. I'm out there, professor at Stanford, I think, today. Long story short, what I learned out of that, I had no systems in place for her. She was a dynamite person. She had a record, but no systems in place, no process in place. And we were not ready to do sales at all. And plus, at that stage of the company, something I learned from Steve Blank was we were all in a different stage. Every business I've started with, there was a bakery business, restaurant business, this business. There's different stages of the business growth. And within those stages, the kind of people you need to hire are very different, at least in my experience. So initially, we're all wearing different hats, right? Example would be initially account manager for us would manage Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, Twitter, and all the other different platforms as well as be the account manager for the client. And then as time grew on, as we grew, now we have people who just manage Facebook because that's their expertise. People just manage Twitter. People just manage review sites. And then we have account managers. But she was not ready to wear multiple hats. I never considered that. So I had to let her go. And we really couldn't afford that expense at that time. So that's one mistake. The second mistake is I thought building sales would not be too hard, because in the corporate environment and even in the school, I was really good at building sales and checking in with the informal leaders to get them to sell their bosses. But building sales outside the corporate world is very different. Out of everything I need to learn from a skill standpoint, that's where I really, really lacked. And as I let her go, let's say her name's Susie, I won't say her name, share it on here, but when I let her go, that was the one time I really had to look in the mirror and say, man, I have no choice. I'm sitting on the couch now. It's this same couch. I have no choice. I've got to build sales. And I was so bad at building sales. I used the analogy. It's kind of like when I was in high school, I was really shy. And I was like the last guy who's going to go ask a girl to dance. It was like quite as bad as that. I hated doing sales. That's why I used my safety blanket to hiring somebody to do sales. But I learned sales. I love it today. I believe I'm really good at it. But I also know I still have a learning curve on it. But I actually love sales. So that's number two. Number three would be is just the amount of trust with money. I share that with some of my mentors or my clients today. Just shocking people's behavior with money. Without question. What do I mean by that? Is if we're dealing with a multimillionaire and he or she owns a business, is them actually paying their invoices and just trusting they're going to fall through. I was really shocked. I come from an environment I never had to collect money from folks, and here's a multimillionaire with all this money, and he or she gets paid by their guests. Most of our clients are first 5 years of restaurants, and I was shocked. And if they said they're going to fall through with the payment, I was surprised that they didn't fall through. And anyway, so I don't know if the word is I've become more callous, more cynical, or I'm sure I have a contract that's not as possible.
Or maybe, I mean, it probably goes back to having those systems and processes in place. Like you probably have a much better process to make sure that you get these invoices paid. And
you're exactly right. You know, that's a great point. Because, for example, with that in mind, it's like after 5 days, we're reaching out to them. Whereas before, it's like, oh, I'm going to trust Joe Schmo. And I don't want that. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, okay. One thing I want to touch on too, you mentioned that, you used to not like sales. It was kind of scary. You didn't want to touch it. Now you love it. You're good at it. I know that's a really, really common issue for so many business owners, small business owners. What did you do to get better at it and to get to the point where you love it?
Yeah. So if you go back to my philosophy about growing, I said about copy and paste. So I went out there and tried to find out who's the best in the world. I watched a million YouTube videos, read books, but I never felt comfortable because one thing that something we always talk about the trade in our company is integrity. So I was coming across a lot of sales books and programs that I just didn't feel good. I felt like I had to be somebody else. And then I came across, and I actually have a couple of books here in case you asked about it, is this book by Chet Holmes. He's away in the last year or two, The Ultimate Sales Machine. And I took a course through his organization, and it was the first time I came across like a philosophy that allowed me to fit in Jim Traister the way I like to be, and just be comfortable. And I didn't take everything that he did, but it allowed me to fit in there for what it's worth. So I just had to practice, and I also had to give myself a break. Right? It's like if I don't make a sale, the first step for me was to get off the couch and actually go to the client's place, right? And then if he or she's not there, the next time I had to learn is, Angie, just want to confirm with you, I will see you at 2. For our appointment, things like that. So it's like step by step and remind myself of that. Whereas before I was attacking just saying, oh, I suck at sales and I've never done it before and this and that. I would take baby steps, and that's the way I try my best to do it with everything. So I copy pasted out his stuff. I would ask for feedback. I literally had a huge proposal pitch yesterday. I checked in with my mentor yesterday morning around 9 o'clock, walked through it, get his feedback. I mean, he's somebody who's done much more than I have in his life. So that's something else I've done. And I talked with 2 other colleagues as well, too, before going into the proposal yesterday. It was something I hadn't done before for what it's worth. So it's like, again, going back to copy and paste. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to, I mean, it sounds like even though you've gotten to the point where you're good at it, you enjoy it, it sounds like you are still continuing to learn and continuing to work to improve and get better.
Yeah, and I would say that's the case in all areas without question. And that's a beautiful thing about having your own business is you just have the freedom to learn as much as you want. And you realize there's just constant, never-ending learning. My friend says perfection of the craft, but I only feel like they were 10% there because if you've ever gone out to Amazon or YouTube or got your phone and have a podcast, it's like, man, it's never-ending learning.
Yes.
Awesome.
It is. It is awesome. Actually, kind of funny, just yesterday I was thinking, I was like, I really need to block out probably even 30 minutes to 1 hour of every weekday just for continuing ed, just to continue to learn and improve my skills and get better. Because I got to the point where I quit doing that. And now I'm like, oh, crap, I'm feeling behind on a few things.
But I feel like you've done a better job than I have as far as managing time because you're doing this podcast here, right? And I know just based on the podcast I've listened to, it's like I'm learning stuff from your podcast too. So it's like you're double dipping on your time, which is smarter than what.
Nice. Yeah, it is kind of cool. I've learned some really incredible things from these interviews.
Yeah.
So you mentioned one word in your previous response, which was freedom. So, of course, that's kind of the theme that we're talking about is freedom. So I'm curious, what do you now have the freedom to do that you didn't have when you were working a full-time job?
Yeah. So what goes to my mind, number one, is to paint the picture how I really feel about this business, and it's in the context of freedom. Is when you own your own business, you are the governor, you're the mayor, you're in charge of the police, you're in charge of human resources, you're the superintendent of schools.
You're the janitor.
Yeah, you're the janitor. By the way, I found the longer I own this business, the closer I'm becoming the janitor versus becoming the mayor. Because now all my people, they're much better at doing the day in, day out than I am. And they're like, responses I get back sometimes is like, you have no idea. And I mean, these are people who've been with me 5 or 6 years. So you're all right about maybe even not even the janitor, maybe the guy who brings the supplies to the janitor. Yeah, so that's the most beautiful thing is that freedom. I always desired that my whole life. I've never enjoyed being on a schedule. Or anybody else's schedule for sure. And that's, so with that said, the freedom, the number one, and I really do mean that about being the governor, the mayor, the superintendent, is I get to make choices. I get to make choices who I want to work with internally, meaning folks on our team, choices with clients, choices of making time for this podcast today, choices of going to chamber meeting this morning, make a choice. I stopped on the road, talk with a client that I'm giving a referral to, and it happens to be 2 clients I'm marrying up, and then another person I get to meet at a client's place that I want to connect him with my client so he gets business. It's like I get a lot of energy out of that. I'm going to go work out after this podcast, and I'm going to go pick up my kid. I could go on and on. It's like I have the freedom to make my own schedule, and which allows me to be even more myself, if that makes sense. Without question. Last thing I will say, and anybody who owns a business will understand this. If you don't understand a business, you're going to think I'm like trying to become a dictator, but it's like, I get to control everything, and I love that. Which really means if you have people, they have total freedom to do like everything, even to get in my face. But my point is, I get to manage it how I want to, and I just love that without anybody to look over and check on me. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, that is pretty awesome. I think that's the big appeal for a lot of people for being a business owner is to have that freedom to make the schedule, to have the control over the decisions. Yeah. So it sounds like you've built up a team throughout the years. Any tips on, and you mentioned too, you made some mistakes. So any tips on that you would give to someone that maybe they're to that point where they think, I think it's about time to bring on someone. What advice would you give to them on hiring that first employee?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that goes to my mind is, there's somebody in a Facebook group the other day and says, do you want to hire a contractor and not an agency? The first thing is, be wide open to everybody, without question. We've hired great contractors. We have 2 agencies, and I consider them really family right now. One of them's only been with us 2 weeks. We consider her family. Another one's, he's literally a partner, become a best friend. And so with that said is, first of all, be wide open. And number one, though, is understand what are your values you're looking for. I never care about skill sets up front, except for in this iteration. So I'm going to answer this 2 different ways. One area I care about skill sets if I'm going to go learn something. And so, for example, when messaging bots first came out about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, it was going to be mainstream, I thought, I reached out, and you would, I'm trying to remember, it's one of these contractor sites for freelancers out there. Can't remember, but it's not
like Upwork.
Yeah, Upwork. Thank you. So I reached out, and I didn't really care about the guy's values or anything. All I did was basically want to pay him for the education, and the technical aspects of a messenger bot. I had somebody edit a book that hopefully is going to come up and come out. And I really didn't care about values. But when it came to hiring somebody who's going to be working with us, is number one is values. So for us, what are our values? Number one on the list is far up is integrity. That's just tremendous with us. I don't care if there's an opportunity to make more money with them, but it's integrity. We always want to be reflected with integrity. I'm looking around like I'm looking at my clients, as well as internally. The other piece is that they're going to deliver, which is part of integrity, on what they say they're going to do. And then technical skills is the third piece, without question, because generally we're hiring for technical skills. For our internal team members, they're doing, when I say internal, we have account managers and we have folks that are day in, day out doing Facebook, on Twitter, etc. We don't really care so much about their technical skills because we have a 30-day training program that we take through. And then our contractors, I look at them as, like I said, especially one gentleman's agency is their family to us. So it's technical skills, but it's also integrity. And this guy has so much integrity. It's just amazing. And again, he's part of family, and so is this other agency owner that we just picked up. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
I mean, yeah, that's really neat. I love that you hire for, look for the integrity first and foremost.
I'm sorry. I'd like to answer a little more. That something just
Yeah.
bubbled up for me because your initial question, if I go back, was basically how to know when to hire. So I'd like to share for the first 2 years, I was hiring people, and I went back to figure out what was my average salary per month for the first 2 years of business. I made roughly $48 a month is what I recall when I did the analysis. That's from the business. Now I was working, remember, at the local college. And I would say roughly the first 5 years, I never did the numbers, but I doubt I made more than $500 a month. My people for sure were making more money than I was on a monthly basis from the business. And literally in the last 2 months, as I shared with my supervisor this morning, is I haven't taken a paycheck these last 2 months. Now it's never been like that, but we have something going on internally. And but we're prepared for that. And that's where I look you in the eye, and I said right from the very beginning is, that not leaving your full-time job, and now, I can afford to leave my full-time job because we have enough cash on hand. I don't have to worry. I don't have to live on this and make silly decisions for our business and start letting people go. I've never let people go as a result of not having cash flow on our team ever. And it really pays a lot forward, as you can imagine, with our team, right? They're just always taken care of first from a financial standpoint versus myself being taken care of myself. However, I do that with other funds from somewhere else, if that makes sense. So in order to grow, we got to hire people at some point. And what I've continually asked myself, like I'll share with you a story that I shared with Cindy, one of our managers, is every single day, you should ask yourself, what do I have to do never to do this job again? What do I mean by that? Not your entire job, but what are these things that I have to follow up on Susie or Angie or Joey or Dylan 2 or 3 times? We have to put a process in place, or we have to do better training of Susie, Judy, Angie, etc. Because that's just taken away from, first of all, your energy, and then also your ability to even drive more sales. So I'm always asking myself that. And I finally got myself on a point. I'm literally just doing only items that are going to be building our business long term. And that was the dream. But that doesn't happen the first year, second year. We're going to year 8 or 9 now.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Jim, I got to say, I'm really impressed with what you've built over the years and how smartly you've built it. It's just, I'm sure there were times where you didn't feel like it in the moment, but now it's like when you can look back over the trajectory of, the growth of your business. I mean, it sounds like you've done it very strategically, very safely and smart. But was there ever a time in that journey where, maybe you stopped and thought, oh crap, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I should just go back to my job?
Yeah, the answer would be no to that. And I'll give you an example. We lost a client 2 months ago that literally changed my standard of living. They actually ran my cash flow for the payments. Never expected that. And there's some context around that. What I shared with my family and mentor of mine is what was so awesome about that point in time is I just sat there, and for the first time, it's like, man, we're not going nowhere. We're not going nowhere at this time. So I never felt like I needed to go back to corporate. And I believe that's a really important choice to make, because once you decide not to go back, you're only going forward no matter what. I consciously have made that choice. Now, there's been times I've worked part-time jobs without question. We've had things bubble up, but I never let this not be the priority focus. That part-time job is to support this. What I had to do is humble myself to bring in that other income so we can continue to move forward. But I've never considered going back to corporate ever.
Nice. Now, for everyone listening and who will watch this in the future and listen in the future, maybe they're thinking either they just quit their job or they're thinking about quitting their job. They have a dream of this freedom lifestyle. What advice, if you could give them one solid piece of advice, would you give them in moving forward and making that decision?
And what I would do is list 3 things on a piece of paper, choose one of those things and do the first one today. do the second one tomorrow, and do the third one. The first one might be just a phone call to somebody, or the first one might be you spend $15 and going down to your city hall and get the name of your business set up, or go down to the bank. It's just a little baby step to get started. It doesn't have to be a whole full-blown business plan. It doesn't have to be you have to get a Facebook page. Just do one little thing. That's all. And that's how we get started with all our projects, right? So we're not overwhelmed, even today after 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. I mean, particularly if you are working a full-time job. I mean, honestly, the way that you build your business is by small little steps, taking small actions every day.
For sure. I'd like to share one other tactic, and I still have to use this today, is find somebody out there. You know, it goes back to my philosophy of copy and paste. Just dial it up on YouTube and find somebody who's gone through what you do. Do not look up Reid Hoffman, the CEO of LinkedIn, or find Gary Vaynerchuk. Find somebody who's going to share with you how they got started. You know, like I share with my son, he's a big basketball fan, so he loves like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. What the media never portrays is their start. There had to be a time that Kobe was just getting started, or LeBron James. It's the same thing with all these folks, and many times we read about them in Forbes, or where they're getting interviewed on a podcast like this, and all you hear about is the end. It's find somebody else who started with your beginning. I find myself, I have to do that with my workouts. I'm not always motivated to go work out. So actually I try to dial something up on YouTube, get some spirit and some energy going. So I think for me, I find that encouraging to find somebody else's story who's like me and then get started.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that kind of reminds me, I've heard a lot of people say, like, don't compare your beginning to someone else's end, because then you get stuck in that comparison trap, and then you think, I can't do this. And then you just kind of give up.
Yeah, I love that. And my mentor shared exactly what you just said the other day. I was talking about how much money we made, and my statement to him was, that's good for me. And he says, Jim, let me interrupt you. You got a lot of great stuff going on, but never share that. And he gave some great examples. But to your point, it's like, yeah, that's going to take away from me even feeling good about what we just did. I was comparing myself to somebody who's much further along, and they've had a different path, to your point.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Jim, you have shared so much just amazing value with us. I want to jump really quickly into the lightning round and ask you just a few quick questions. Okay.
Fair enough.
Are you ready?
I don't know. Do I have to answer them all, honestly?
No, you can say pass if you want, but they're pretty easy. I think they're pretty easy. The first one is, what is your favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning?
So we're already discussing that this morning. So I was taking my kid, his name's Lewis, on the way to school this morning. So I said, I really want to spend time with you tomorrow. So generally what that entails is we're going to go to one of our clients owns a butcher. It's a well-known butcher meat market up near his school. So we're going to go buy some meat up there, and
Nice.
we're going to cook tomorrow. We're meeting some friends, and then we're going to go play basketball for sure. And then we'll see if we can go hiking as well too. So
Nice.
out of all the common theme out of all that is spending time and then just conversing. My kid's 13 years old now, so it's just like it's a time to have nice conversations, and he'll be gone soon. So that's all I think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. I love that. Okay, when you need to churn out some work, you need to get some serious shit done. Do you have something that you listen to, or something, that you use to help you be really productive?
Well, it depends if I'm motivated or not. So, like, for example, I had to do the invoicing and payroll today. And so when I'm not even clenching my hands like this off screen. And so what I usually do when I'm feeling very sluggish about something I don't enjoy doing, believe it or not, is we have Alexa in the living room right here, and I request "We Are the Champions" by Freddie Mercury or Queen.
Nice.
So that's the start. And then generally I'm playing a podcast in the background is usually what I'm doing. Which I really enjoy and just keeps my mind going without question. But I'm generally not playing music when I'm working. Usually it's almost always a YouTube, somebody being interviewed, or it's a podcast that I'm listening to in the background.
Nice. Okay. And then do you have a book? You've already recommended some great ones, but are there any other books or even podcasts, since you're a big podcast listener, that you recommend to fellow entrepreneurs?
I sure do. So I'm a big podcast fan. I do a lot of driving, so I rarely listen to radio. I'm almost always listening to podcasts. The one I was listening to this morning was it's Masters of Scale. I love that podcast. I never thought it would be appropriate for me because it's ran by Reid Hoffman, who's the CEO or president of LinkedIn. He also worked with Elon Musk earlier in his career at PayPal. And I just didn't think it would be appropriate because those guys are at such a level. And I always am looking for information that I can apply the next day. but he is the best interviewer. Like I was sharing with a family member, when he interviewed Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, it was the best interview ever because it was information I could apply right to my business. And I find that to be true again. Another one is The Conscious Millionaire by, it's my business coach, J.B. Crum, and of course, Tim Ferriss as well too. And I'm just sharing ones that aren't and might not be as mainstream. And then Perpetual Traffic by Digital Marketer. And then for women specifically, I've been a big fan for her for years, is Why Not Now? I just turned it on. I'm sorry. Is Why Not Now by Amy Jo Martin.
It's a new one I've never heard of.
Nope. I got to turn it off.
Giving us a little preview.
Yeah, right. She is awesome. I mean, she had 1 million followers back in the day. I reach out to her and she'd reply right back. She's just a wonderful example of a business person. If anybody wants to, if I had a daughter, that's who I'd have her following without question.
Nice.
That's the podcast side. Book-wise, one of my colleagues recommended this book, Never Lose a Customer Again. What I love about this book is we're going to be applying it right away with a new product that we have. And then I really believe this is important. It wasn't such a skill set that I needed, but if you remember at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about some of the things that contributed to our success. One piece was managing cash flow from the beginning. I see it time and time again is that people can't make decisions for their business the way they like to, or they're failing, or they go out of businesses because they don't understand the finance piece of the business. So important. I've already started my 13-year-old out on this book. Cash flow was the cash flow quadrant.
Yeah.
What I like about this book is it's really in layman's terms and something I can't tell you enough that's so important to understand before you get started with business from my point of view is understanding cash flow. It was a mystery to me even after I left undergraduate school. I still didn't understand cash flow, but he's done a really good job of that for what it's worth. And so if you don't understand finance, understand cash flow. Then third is we've talked about is anything around sales, and I've already shared that book by Chet, and he's got videos online. It might come across a little salesy, but at the end of the day, there's great information there, which I just love.
Yeah. Awesome. Those are really great books and podcasts. I'm going to check a lot of those out. Okay. Is there an app or a software program that you could not run your business without?
There's several, without question. So I'd like to start off with Yesware, which is an email tracking application. And what's nice about it, I'm pretty sure they still have, it's not just a free trial, but you can use it for free, like with 150 emails. How do I use that? So whenever I'm doing a sales call and I have some follow-up, I want to know, let's say, Angie, you're prospect of ours, I want to know if you opened up that email. Then I want to understand which particular slides you looked at so I can address those the next time we get on a call. So what did it do for me? It changed everything. I was just giving this advice in the Facebook group to somebody struggling with sales. The first 2 years, I'd be reaching out to you, Angie, as a prospect, and it's like, oh, she said she wanted to hear from me. I didn't hear from her. Well, lo and behold, when I finally got this email tracking, I came to learn Angie didn't open up the email. So, people could have gone to spam, or she was so busy or whatever. So now I know if people have opened up the email, first of all. And I don't want to call them right after they opened up. I'll give them a day. It also allows me to know which pages that you're going on our presentation that I'll send you along. For example, so now I know to include that on everybody's who's similar to Angie. So that's Yesware. Number 2 is LastPass. We've got that in the last 2 years.
I love that.
Managing passwords. I should have got that earlier. It literally can cost you nothing if you're a small business. It's worth every penny. Big mistake I made. And then Active Campaign for email changed my life in our business without question. And then of course Zoom without question. Zoom for conference calls. And I know you know about that, but we didn't get started. I would have chosen them over some other applications for conference calls in the past, for what it's worth.
Nice. Yeah, great tips there. Okay, and then my last one. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that keeps you powered that you tend to live by?
Yeah, there's several. But what comes to mind, number one, when I'm being good and I've got enough sleep, is I create my own reality. And then things are going to keep getting better and better. And what I mean by that is, man, nobody else is in control of my day, my thoughts, no nothing. I am. And what's so awesome about that is I always can make the next choice without question. And like somebody said to me the other day is that I'm overwhelmed. Well, the good thing about being overwhelmed is, first of all, I have choices. Number 2 is I'm not depressed. I'm not distracted. I'm overwhelmed. And I have a choice of going forward on anything I'm overwhelmed on. And so when I'm operating my best, that's what I mean with that quote. If I'm not acting at my best and I'm exhausted, then there's a lot of other quotes I would use, but I don't want to use that language on here.
Nice. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. I create my own reality. I love that. That's a good tip for everyone. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you've really kind of pulled back the veil and shared some of those inner details from the beginning of your journey and some of the mistakes you've made along the way. And, and you've shared so many amazing resources and tips. There's just been a lot of value. So I want to thank you for that.
You're very kind.
And then for anyone watching and listening, I will have a show notes page up on my website with a link to the replay of this video, as well as all the links to every resource that Jim mentioned throughout the interview. And then, Jim, I want to give you a chance to share with our listeners and with our viewers how they can connect with you and learn more about Hospitality Fan.
Sure. And before I do that, I do want to make sure that the fan base, in case there's anybody new listening, I would suggest that you go out to Angie's website. I've never seen so much training and resources around Pinterest ever. I've been doing this 8 or 9 years. Yeah, please take a look at that without question. I'd also suggest that you take a look at some previous interviews she's done. It was I made a note because I really want to mention this today. There's one done with a Liz Hunter, if I recall her last name.
Carter.
Oh, Carter, thank you very much. And Brittany Darren. And there's one other lady who did something with a baby's product as well too.
Oh yeah, Vandita.
Yes, that's awesome. So I want to suggest to everybody, it doesn't matter where you're at. It could be even the corporate world. There's a lot of insights there without question. If you're looking for inspiration, as you were asking me for earlier, Angie, as far as getting started, I'd start with those 3 interviews right there. They're just fantastic without question.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
As far as getting in contact with me, we have a couple platforms. I would get connected on LinkedIn with us. We have a weekly blog on top of it, so there's some value for you there to follow us. So I'm obviously at Jim Traister on LinkedIn. In the world of Twitter, it's HospitalityFan. We have a very active Twitter account connected with Gary Vaynerchuk. So maybe, and Angie, Joe Martin I mentioned, we both follow each other. So maybe that's a way for you to get in with Gary and Amy Joe. And then we're on Instagram, of course, too, very active at Hospitality Fan Inc. And I'd like to share with anybody who's watching this and your fan base, Angie, what I'd like to make a offer to them is a copy of our book. It's still going through editing.
Wow.
Just send me an email to Jim. Jim, I got to think, what's my own email? I don't send too many emails.
Yeah.
Jim at HospitalityFan.com, and just say you watched Angie's interview with me, and just need to do that by Monday. If you watch this later on in life, you can request the book. Actually, I'm going to give an extra bonus if they get back to us by Monday. As you can also get, we have a new, we call it review visibility tool. So if you're ever going out to a brand's website and you see these reviews, it's kind of like a slideshow that you have these pop-ups of reviews. We're doing beta testing right now, and I'll provide everybody who's viewing this, and you let me know by Monday morning, I guess it's about 72 hours, that you would like to beta test that. We'll offer it for free for you through next March.
Wow.
Okay?
Oh, wow. That's so generous.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That's fantastic, Jim. I really appreciate you sharing that with everyone watching. So I will make sure, again, I'll put all of this in the show notes so that everyone can get those links, have information, access to your email address, the information, and details on those offers that you're willing to provide. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jim. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, so make sure that you head over to angiegensler.com and you can get access to the show notes. I'll have all the details to everything that Jim mentioned. And then while you're over there, make sure that you also check out my 2019 social media content calendar. That calendar has 365 days of content planned out for you. It's really designed to help you save a ton of time, a ton of stress next year. And then it's really also to help you be more consistent on social media so that you can grow your following and you can get more engagement on your posts. So make sure you check that out as well. And then if you enjoyed today's interview with Jim, make sure that you like my Facebook page. You head over there so that you get notified every time I go live with another entrepreneur to share their story from a corporate employee to a successful entrepreneur. And then finally, remember that perseverance, not perfection, is the key to creating a business and life you love. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next week.